Heartbeat of the Community, Recruiting and Retaining Teachers in Rural Schools, is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
There's nothing more important than being a teacher and impacting students on a daily basis.
As an educator, as a mother, I think kids deserve to have good teachers, and that should not be dependent upon your zip code. It should not matter where you live.
In a rural district, the school district is the heartbeat of everything that happens around you.
Truly great educators are engaged in the lifestyle of a teacher. It's not a profession. It's not something that you can punch the clock at 8:30, you walk out the door at 4 and you're done. You know, it is truly a lifestyle you've got to want.
The retention of teachers is absolutely critical for delivering excellent curriculum for our students.
We looked at the teacher supply and demand trends in Michigan over the last 5 years. The Michigan Department of Education, they requested better and more comprehensive information on teacher supply and demand in Michigan. We don't find like an overall statewide shortages, but we do find shortages in some pockets.
When we talk about teacher shortage in rural districts, I fully believe we have a lot of folks certified in the state who could teach. I think it's a geographic shortage.
Rural areas in our study are found to be affected by teacher shortages maybe more than districts in other locales. Teachers in rural areas have higher, I would say, attrition or have lower retention than teachers in other geographic areas.
A lot of people want that city life and feel. However, when you're living in an area where I was, you're an hour away from the nearest urban center. You're away from that stuff. Being able to go to have choices of restaurants, shopping, movie theaters, that sort of thing. That's one thing that rural schools sometimes have a hard time competing against.
We're limited geographically here, so we really can't be attracting enough kids to make up for the lack of funds. We need awareness that we're falling behind, and it's not because we're not working hard enough or we're asking for the moon. We need more teachers who are trained, who can work closely with these kids, whose needs are greater and greater as time goes by.
Can't speak for the other districts, but in our district, for 20% of teachers to no longer be there from 2 years ago is mind-boggling.
I think the challenges maybe stem from having to do a lot of different things. I think as a teacher in a rural district, you might be asked not only to teach, but maybe to coach a sport and advise a club and lead a committee.
It's more difficult to be a teacher in a rural area because you're spread more thin.
I mean, we haven't had a school nurse ever. We've lost our librarians years ago. We don't have a curriculum director. We do it all.
That jack of all trades sometimes is difficult because you have to become an expert in such a wide variety of areas. Other challenges, I think, are finances in a rural district when you have a limited budget.
It makes it more difficult to recruit and retain a teacher because they may literally be the entire English department for a secondary building. Or you could be in a situation where we need to hire you as the English teacher, but we also need somebody who can teach social studies and science. And so to find somebody with multiple certifications across multiple grade levels becomes more difficult, and that, I think, is a barrier to initial hire and then a barrier to retaining.
And so you don't find a gargantuan amount of people thinking genuinely about this as something that they want to do. When they know that it is not well funded, they know that in some areas it's not well supported, they know that some people in the industry are warning them not to do this.
You could have situations where there are plenty of people to fill particular teaching slots, but you worry about the quality of those people that are applying to fill a slot. So that might be a situation where there's not actually a shortage. You can find someone, but there's still a staffing challenge to find someone that you think is going to be really good at what they're going to be doing for the class. Evidence suggests that teacher quality and the variation in teacher quality can have pretty profound impacts on student achievement.
Teaching is an extremely noble profession, and I feel like we need to really show students what they're going to be experiencing before they go to college so that they can make an educated decision as to whether or not they want to pursue teaching.
One type of partnership is the Grow Your Own programs, where like districts and teacher preparation programs to help create more streamlined pathways for teachers to teach in their own local communities.
I want you to make a sentence using a Comer conjugation, and I'll walk around and check to see if you're right.
The Teacher Academy is a program for high school juniors and seniors who are interested in exploring the teaching profession. It's a 2-year program, and the bulk of the time in this program is spent in classrooms working with students, sort of like a student teacher would. And every marking period, they change placements, so they get a total of 8 different age levels and subjects to work with. I have 19 participating districts in this program. Everyone is considered rural geographically.
I think by exposing the Teacher Academy students to a classroom, I think it helps them dive right into a class. They can see that every class is unique, and how do you work with this student? How do you handle when this child is having a bad morning? And it provides those high school students that here's the reality of what it is to run a classroom. So many kids, they'll say, well, I want to go into teaching because I love children, and that's obviously a first point to have, but then it's also knowing how to handle the children of all varieties of personalities and academic strengths, and having the chance to do it in high school, it gives them an earlier exposure to it.
So if you say that the rocket's as fast as lightning, lightning strikes really fast, right? So you'd pretty much just be saying the rocket's going really fast. So you just have to break down what the simile or metaphor is saying.
Last September, when I first walked into the classroom, I was super overwhelmed because I was super scared, super nervous. I was like, they're not going to think that I'm like a teacher. They're going to just think of me as a high school student. But now I definitely know that they do think of me like a teacher.
I think it creates a resiliency that might not exist if you just start kind of as an adult.
There's a real practical end to this. So they are in classrooms, they're working with kids every day, they are making handouts, bulletin boards. I mean, they're getting really dirty into the end of what it's like behind the curtain for a teacher.
They have to start asking questions about, when do you get to school? When do you leave school? How much do you take home when you go? How much time do you think you spend planning for a 50-minute lesson? And to me, those are the realistic pieces of teaching, recognizing that it's not just 8 to 2:30 every day.
I think it's definitely mentally and emotionally preparing you because you get in the mindset of a teacher, especially shadowing the other teacher. You get to learn about what they're doing behind the scenes along with the actual teaching, so you're kind of seeing what you would be getting yourself into in a way.
So emotionally and mentally, preparing yourself to be a teacher, just the surprises that you can never read about in a book, especially in a rural area, like low socioeconomic, like a student that, you know, they might not have eaten that weekend and they come to school, or they saw their parents get into a fight or something happened, not to dwell on the negative, but that is a lot what we deal with, and just how to deal with that off the cuff. Like, there's no training for that.
And they just really understand if teaching is something they want to do. So if they do enter the teaching profession, they're going to stick with it.
I really like having that interaction with them, being able to see their faces light up when they understand a question or when I'm able to help them understand that question.
All right, so your next one is going to include a de Baer conjugation.
I wanted to be a part of the program because my dad was a teacher and I saw the relationship he had with his students, and I really wanted that.
You watch him kind of come out of his shell, and you watch him take on this idea of, I have this cool idea, can I make this happen? And, you know, as long as you give him the right support and the right guidance, when you want to teach a lesson, tell me what it is, let's go for it, let's try it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but we'll figure it out together.
Students who go through this program become leaders in their school district. They become those students that the teachers rely on. They assist with tutoring, with after-school activities. So I would say it benefits the districts in terms of raising up these leaders and young people who are responsible and reliable.
I think that there's some pretty good evidence that good mentoring, good induction and coaching helps to retain teachers. So if rural areas have retention problems, and they do have slightly lower retention rates than in suburban areas, for instance, then having someone assigned as a mentor and thinking about induction processes could be a means of reducing attrition out of the school system.
You've taken something that I'm familiar with, and you're letting someone who might not be familiar with snow, they have that. So they kind of,
that makes sense.
Yep.
A mentor teacher for my program is someone who is really passionate about teaching, someone who cares about the future of education and wants to mentor young people.
Being a mentor teacher does keep me on my toes, and it's a win-win situation because I get to share my years of knowledge, but I also, my teacher academy, and particularly Addie, has shown me new things too.
So now that we're talking parts of speech, right? So this was the review that they had and the quiz that they took. What is the next assessment we can do of their parts of speech abilities?
Tiffany is everything I would look for in a mentor teacher.
The biggest positive is just making sure that this program exists in our building and making sure that kids who genuinely want to work with other kids and think about teaching as a career have that opportunity.
I have taught over 1,700 students in the last 20 years, and we were able to connect with over 900 who are currently teaching. So a lot of the students, that's about 80% of the students in my program, they do go on to college to pursue education as a career. A lot of my students really want to come back and teach in the district where they graduated from, so they love the idea of coming back and giving back to their community.
It's a great program. I feel like more kids should be involved in it. You really get to build relationships with these students, and it's just a good feeling.
Does that make sense now? Okay.
I knew that I wanted to be a teacher because I was kind of iffy before. So with the program, now I'm really certain that I want to do that.
And some of my students, of course, decide that they don't want to teach at all, and that is equally valuable to me because I don't want them pursuing something in college that isn't right for them. I don't want them being a teacher if it's not something that they, really are passionate about and want to do.
The best advertisement for an area is having someone actually be part of the community. There are lots of rural areas that just may be skipped over by job applicants because they don't know much about the area.
Lakeland Elementary serves the greater surrounding area of Elk Rapids. A lot of teachers from the neighboring districts do seem to apply for our positions. What we are starting to see, though, is that new teacher out of college, that applicant pool has really started to dwindle.
The evidence is that a pretty high percentage of teacher candidates end up employed in the same school districts in which they did their student teaching, and I think it's something like close to 20% end up employed in the very same school. Oftentimes student teaching is not happening in a rural school system, and so when they are thinking about applying for jobs, they may not apply to some systems that look like they're way out in the middle of nowhere to them. I think that there is a real opportunity to have student teachers go out and get to know the community and say, hey, maybe I wouldn't have thought about this place.
So at Central Michigan University, we have affiliation agreements with other community colleges where we allow students to stay in their community and do the bulk of their teacher preparation program in their area. We bring CMU's program to the campus. Our faculty travel to them. We really work with the community that is there to offer the high quality programming for those students. In communities like this one, specifically rural communities, oftentimes it's hard to recruit teachers to come there. One of the unique features of CMU's teacher education program is that we allow our students to return home to do their student teaching internship. And so by allowing people to go home where they have connections, they're already rooted there. And so it makes sense. That is really how a lot of rural areas are recruiting. And so because we allow our students to take advantage of that, we place everywhere across the Lower Peninsula all the way up to the Upper Peninsula.
I became a host teacher because I really believe in this profession. It's not just about teaching the kids in the room, it's about training the next level up, because someday someone's going to have to step into my shoes, and I would like to think that they're going to be dedicated and that they're going to work as hard as anybody else I work with.
We can't take 1 away from 0, so we have to go over to our tens place value.
Anissa is a non-traditional student in that she already has 1 degree and then had a whole life as a mother.
When I had children, I recognized that I had a passion to make a difference, and teaching just seemed to fit.
She grew up here, and to be able to give back is meaningful. She's also got everything she really needs already in place. She's smart, she's capable, she relates well with the kids. She would be a great asset.
The program that I am in is an extension of CMU, and the program here offers night courses, weekend courses that meet the needs of moms and dads and non-traditional students. It's something I could work with to get where I needed to be.
She was able to still balance all of the things that mothers have to do on a day-to-day basis and still be a full-time student. And now she's finishing up student teaching here.
It's a process that we have to try to get as much in the period of time that she'll be with me, to give her the tools she'll need for when she has to do it on her own.
When you're out in the field and engaging with high-quality practitioners and you're actually working with children for the first time, and they're connecting the theories and the content, and then they're actually seeing them applied either through observations or then the first time doing it themselves and either wildly succeeding or wildly failing, whichever way, they're able to learn so much from that.
If they don't have a little taste of that before they're thrown into it, we lose them. I mean, there's a reason we lose so many teachers before they've even put 5 years into the profession. It's because there are all those plates spinning and they're not ready for it. Every day you're building a little bit at a time and bringing her into it, so that as I model it, then I step back and then she tries it.
This is a real example of grow your own, which we're seeing with a lot of our rural partners, where they're really stressing students who grew up in their communities, who maybe didn't get a teaching degree right away, but they're connecting them with programs like ours that are accessible to non-traditional students, and saying, we will even support you, we will help you get that degree, and then come back. Come back and fill one of these roles here, because we want you home.
I hope Anissa does become a teacher in our school district.
Student teaching experience helps their quality of preparation, particularly if you place them in the right kind of schools.
And so when you're able to have someone come back to their hometown, they're less likely to leave. And so it does provide a sense of community and security for students, that they know, I've seen that person in the hall, I know who that is, and that, oh, next year she's going to be my teacher.
To keep teachers in a district, you have to have a strong leader, an administrator, who is not afraid to think outside the box.
What if we could figure out a way to better access resources to take the cost away for a couple years on the front end?
Most teachers do not go into this profession to make a fortune. We go into this profession because we love children, we love learning, and we love sharing what we can do. But we need to feel that sense of value and appreciation and know that what we do matters, not just to ourselves and our students, but the greater community.
De la mañana, tarde, or noche.
Usually when a downturn hits, it just hits the rural communities really badly.
I was really concerned to see that the teaching staff's impacted because the budget shrinks And when the budget shrinks, 85% of your budget is salaries, benefits, and retirement. That's a huge drain on our resources here in the Valley.
There are many frustrations. I take on a lot of extra roles. It wears me down. I'll be honest. It's just that we don't have the funding, we don't have the opportunities, we don't have the manpower to make that work.
State requires us to take, 5 to 6 years of education, and that comes with a significant debt load. And when you have a debt load of let's say 40,000, you're making 30,000, you're really in the hole. And then you have to eat. So you throw that in the mix, and then rent and everything else, and then continuing education. It just is really hard to make it an appealing career for people.
That's not a glowing endorsement for the profession. And it's not because teachers don't love what they do. It's because they feel really threatened and challenged by the system that's around them, that they don't feel either respects or appreciates their commitment. They don't feel empowered in terms of salary, which oftentimes get frozen or locked in place.
I could imagine that there just are fewer places to rent if you're a new person, not ready to buy a house in a rural community. So I can see how that could be a challenge for a rural community as well.
I think housing is a real challenge. The geographic commute is a real challenge. And then also having childcare. Once we get people here, we lose them oftentimes to those challenges, and that makes it difficult. So how do we disrupt that cycle? And that's part of the reason why we wanted to create the Teacher Foundation, because if we can't fully impact what the state's doing in terms of the funding formula, what can we do to increase the quality of life for our teachers?
Districts can help recruit and retain their teachers by forming partnerships with teacher preparation programs and other stakeholders like foundations or local organizations like the Chamber of Commerce or local business to help address the challenge or the need together.
So when Catherine came to our community, we talked about where are some creative, innovative ways to look at how we can retain our teachers in small rural places like Maple Valley.
And we started talking about what would it take to build a foundation that we could use to leverage the interest and have a sustainable fund that we could help take care of our teachers and improve their quality of life. So I polled the teachers and I asked them what kinds of things make a difference in your quality of life. And we addressed some of those challenges: affordable housing, childcare that's affordable for them, reduction of student loan payments.
I think the Teacher Foundation with Dr. Bertolini is a wonderful idea. It is so browbeating to just take your paycheck and give it away. I could not fathom living like that. So I can't imagine what a new teacher is doing making that salary, and then they have to pay back college loans. So with Dr. Bertolini and this foundation, what they're trying to do is take away some of those financial burdens or lessen them.
So if we can have a contract with a teacher that says, every quarter we'll pay off another $2,500 of your student loan, but you have to live here and you have to be potentially from here. So we're trying to entice our residents to come back home and live. We're also looking at, is there a way potentially that we could build some modular homes that are safe and affordable?
My thoughts was great. If this can be done and the amount of funds can be raised, that's awesome.
I think it isn't just a salary thing. It isn't just a benefits thing. It's an intrinsic sense of belonging and worth.
It makes me feel like somebody's out there trying to advocate the best that they can with the resources we have. So, it makes me feel good about that she's out there at least trying to do something different by any means possible to try to, spark talent and then keep the current talent that we have.
I think the foundation is one, not a comprehensive way to do that, but it's one way to start solving that problem and saying to our teachers, we value you, we see you, we appreciate you. We're going to give you all the tools you need, not only to do well in your daily professional life, but in your personal life as well.
I really am excited that this school district is brave enough to step forward and really think about how we might be able to partner together on this.
I feel truly blessed to have somebody like Dr. Bertolini and the community work together to form this foundation to help new staff, because I don't think anybody's ever considered that. They just always said, oh, well, sorry for them. They'll get past it. But it doesn't have to be like that. And if people can help support new teachers who had a lot stripped away from them years ago, then we can bring them up to par, and we can recruit wonderful new teachers and get them to stay here and become part of our community.
I really hope this effort inspires other districts, because I think it's high time that business, industry, education, we need to start forging partnerships together. If they want to have a stake in how we're producing learners that are able to be adaptive and fluid and flexible, because that's what I think the future workplace expects or will need from us as educators as well as the kids coming up into it, we really need to work together. I think the rural life is such an important thing to people who have known it. It's just this sense of connection that people are going to look out for you, always. And you're not alone in this thing called life.
That's how you reach kids that are unreachable. That's how you reach them. You are invested in them and they know it. Especially in rural areas, you have to be willing to get in the ring and feel the sting with them too.
I think that the climate and the culture of the school really can play a part in retaining good teachers, especially those new teachers.
If you're looking to make a difference in students' lives and have a small, tight-knit community where you're able to make a difference every single day, I think a rural district is definitely the place for you to go.
The benefits of teaching in a rural area have to be the community ties. The parents are involved. You start to recognize faces. School events become the community events.
It seems to be when teachers come to us, they love that small town atmosphere and a small town community.
I think that by recruiting teachers to come to rural districts, they will be able to build relationships with the community, with the staff members at the school.
I love that I get to know my students on a more personal level. I love that we have, some smaller classes. I get to work with students both in the classroom and outside of the classroom.
If somebody asked me if they should teach in a rural area, if you have a passion for students, absolutely. You might have to wear more hats in a rural area. Be ready for that, but it's worth it.
Heartbeat of the Community, Recruiting and Retaining Teachers in Rural Schools is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.